Late in YouTube.
Okay, fantastic. Let's see. I just want to make sure I'm pulling up the and I'm pulling up the live stream. Excellent. Okay, good evening. The time is now 5 p.m. I'm Chairman Mike Curry, and I'd like to call this joint special select board and advisory committee meeting to order on this 26th day of May 2021. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Okay, before we begin, I'd like to state for the record that not only are we being streamed live on TCTV Cable Station 8 and our YouTube web platform, but this evening's recording will be available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. This special meeting is, we're very fortunate to have the Mass Department of Revenue and Division of Local Services team with us this evening. For those watching and for the advisory committee and the other members of the select board, we had our Town of Templeton Financial Management Review report submitted to us. Adam, I think that was about a month and a half ago.
March.
Yep. In which time we were able to review it and just accept that report as, the symbolic, just that mode of communications. And that report was a culmination of not only many years, but many interviews with the DLS, with several members of the Templeton staff, the advisory committee chair, myself, part of the select board. And that comprehensive document basically said, we're pulling the dipstick of, Templeton's engine, for lack of a better term, and really trying to give us an update on the financial health and overall management practices within Templeton. I think Jared, I think we probably are on the phone for close to 2 hours. Sometimes they're short, but if they have like if they have really good established relationships within the community, I think we fostered some really good communication and a lot of ideas and a lot of kind of aha moments along the way. So this evening we thought it would be in the best interest of the community to have a joint special meeting between our advisory committee and the Board of Selectmen, and have the DLS come in and give a kind of an overview of what they've seen and any recommendations moving forward. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to Jared Curtis so he could introduce all of our guests here tonight. Go ahead, Jared. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you guys for inviting us to this joint meeting of the Select Board and Advisory Committee to discuss our recent review and our recommendations. My name is Jared Curtis, and I'm a project manager with the Division of Local Services Technical Assistance Bureau. I'm also joined by Tara Lynch, who worked on the project and will be available for questions and answers at the end of this project. And as Deb mentioned, we're also joined by Deb Wagner, who is the Bureau of Accounts Field Advisor for Templeton, and the supervisor of the Springfield Regional Office. Next.
Great, Jared. I'm going to bring up your presentation. I just want, if someone can confirm that they see that.
That's it.
Good.
If you want to go to the next slide, that would be great.
Here we go.
I'd like to provide a quick overview of the Division of Local Services, also known as DLS, and the Technical Assistance Bureau, referred to as TAB. DLS provides oversight, training, and guidance through its 5 bureaus to assist Massachusetts cities and towns in the achievement of sound and efficient fiscal management. DLS is responsible for the accuracy and quality of local accounting and treasury functions, ensuring that property assessments and taxation are completed fairly and equitably, interpreting state laws as they pertain to financial matters, and distributing local aid, state aid estimates, and maintaining a comprehensive data bank on municipal finance information. DLS has 55 employees spread across the Commonwealth in field offices in Worcester, Springfield, and Boston. Next. The Technical Assistance Bureau, or TAB, advises cities and towns on opportunities to improve their financial management operations. We strive to provide communities with guidance and resources they need to strengthen core competencies and operate more efficiently and effectively. TAB consists of a bureau chief headed by Zach Blake and 5 project managers like myself. We bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise to each project and have a combined 100 years of municipal finance experience. We collaborate with all DLS bureaus to produce reports that are customized to meet your community's needs. We offer assistance on a wide variety of municipal issues and topics. We can assist your community with implementing best practices or conduct a general assessment of your financial condition. Some of the things that TAB does: we conduct in-depth financial management reviews and study individual finance office practices and procedures, something like we did in Templeton. We produce tailored financial planning guidance for policies, including budgeting, free cash, stabilization, forecasting, and capital planning, to name a few. TAB develops and circulates financial management best practices and tools such as debt service calculators, property tax impact calculators, and a residential exemption calculator. We provide hands-on financial management training assistance by helping accountants, treasurers, and collectors. Next. At the Select Board's request, the Technical Assistance Bureau assessed the progress of Templeton's implementation of the recommendations contained in the 2009 Financial Management Review. In addition to this analysis, we provided 6 new best practice recommendations based on our interviews and research. During our review, we spoke with a member of the Select Board, Advisory Committee, Town Administrator, Town Accountant, Deputy Assessor, and Treasurer Collector. We reviewed town documents that included local bylaws, financial policies, annual reports, job descriptions, warrant articles, audit reports, management letters, tax rate recapitulation sheets, balance sheets, and other financial records. We also utilized internal resources at DLS, such as community reports that are submitted to us from Templeton, the Municipal Data Bank, cross-bureau discussions, and other DLS resources. Based on our review and findings, we provided a status of completed and ongoing, in progress, and incomplete to each of the 22 prior recommendations. A completed status indicates that the recommendation was implemented by Templeton. A completed and ongoing status shows that the recommendation was implemented and should be monitored annually for updates and changes. In progress indicates that the town has taken steps towards applying the recommendation, but has additional work in order to complete the task. Incomplete indicates that Templeton has not followed through with the recommendation. We also provided best practice enhancements for prior recommendations without regard to status based on our analysis of Templeton's financial operations. The enhancements consisted of bylaw updates, further strengthening of budgeting and capital planning, processing accounts payable warrants bi-weekly, improving the financial forecast, updating reserve policies, and developing a financial procedures manual for each department. When discussing best practices, we're referring to promoting efficiency, effectiveness, accountability, and fiscal sustainability. Next. The next 2 slides provide a list of the prior recommendations and the status based on our findings. Despite the pandemic, Templeton continues to make great advancements in turning around its fiscal health. We are pleased to report that Templeton has made progress on or completed 15 out of the 22 recommendations. Out of those 22 recommendations, 10 have been completed, 5 are in progress, and 7 are incomplete. We would like to applaud the effort of the Select Board, Advisory Committee, Town Administrator, and Town Hall staff for implementing many of the recommendations and encourage officials to address those that remain outstanding. In addition to this report, we furnished Templeton with a new forecast template, an enterprise fund indirect cost template, and a capital planning tool to help with future financial management. Mike, if you want to skip to the next slide. This is just a continuation of the list, and then let's go one more slide. Based on our research, we incorporated 6 new recommendations into the financial management review update. We recommend that the town administrator's weekly reports be moved to a monthly format to coincide with the second select board meeting of each month. In a community the size of Templeton, monthly updates should be adequate to stay on top of the developments in each department. We recommend the town administrator formulate a corrective action plan to tackle audit and management letter findings. We also recommend that the departmental employee completing a turnover provide the accountant with a schedule signed by a treasurer collector staff member. We recommended that the advisory committee reduce its membership from 7 to 5 members due to the lack of volunteers. We recommend that Templeton develop strategies and plan for how to fill future vacancies due to turnover and retirements. And we also recommended that the town develop a policy that guides the use of social media platforms. Next. At this time, I'd like to highlight some of the progress the town has made to strengthening its fiscal stability over the last several years. Templeton has created a strong town administrator position to oversee and guide the daily operations. The position was also codified in the town bylaws. The town implemented a new budget document that is transparent and loaded with details outlining the budget and how it was developed. Templeton adopted financial policies to help guide decision-making. The town has regional agreements with Phillipston for police dispatch, Winchendon for an animal control officer, and Dunstable and Townsend for a joint health insurance agreement. Templeton redesigned its website to make it more user-friendly and increase the amount of information posted to it. Templeton consistently holds department head meetings bi-monthly, which offer staff a chance to discuss internal happenings and get updates from colleagues about what is going on throughout town. Revenue and expenditure reports are distributed monthly to department heads to keep track of appropriation balances and to help avoid deficit spending. In 2019, Templeton's bond rating was upgraded from A1 to an AA3. Over the last several years, the town has submitted its tax rate recap and balance sheet to DLS timely. In turn, tax bills are sent timely to ensure sufficient cash flow, and free cash is certified prior to fall town meeting. Templeton's certified free cash has remained above the town's goal of 5% of the general operating budget, with an average of 7.65% over the last 4 years. To continue the town's focus on building reserves, the select board recently increased the general stabilization fund policy target from 5% to 8% of the prior fiscal year's general operating budget. The balance in the stabilization fund is up over $800,000 in the last 4 years. Next. Based on our research and findings, we are proposing updates to the following town documents. Bylaw Chapter 59, Article 3, which is the town administrator powers and duties. Bylaw Chapter 9, Article 1, advisory committee membership from 7 to 5 legal voters. Bylaw Chapter 28, Article 3, audit and management letter corrective action plan. Updates to financial policies include the free cash policy, development of a one-time revenue use policy, and the creation of a sewer enterprise fund policy. In addition to acting on the enhancements and new recommendations provided, the select board should also consider the following. The town should incorporate the informal agreement with Templeton Municipal Light and Water Plant into a formal pilot. The town should work on strengthening communication among boards, committees, and town hall staff. And Templeton should begin the process of developing procedure manuals for the financial departments. Next. Thank you very much for inviting us to be a part of this meeting. At this time, we are happy to answer any questions that you folks may have.
Mike, you're on mute.
I'm normally off mute, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't have any, I was basically thanking you again, Jared, for the presentation and your team and that the report that we received prior. I backed it up a slide, even just to kind of on that the second bullet from the bottom with communication. Not everybody needs to agree all the time. You might even wind up having serial disagreement, but communication is absolutely vital. And I just wanted to kind of highlight again, here we are in a joint session between the advisory committee and the select board to be able to kind of collectively share thoughts, opinions, or disagreements, even with the report itself. So I'm very, very much looking forward to hearing some of the participation that we've got tonight. I had questions, so I'm just going to turn it over to really as a question and answer panel for Jared, Deb, and Tara. Thank you. I didn't get to say hello when we started the meeting, but thank you for joining this evening. I didn't go over the normal rules for Zoom or otherwise. So if people want to just either raise their hand on the camera, or if you've got the raise hand feature, that way we won't talk over anybody, but I'll go ahead and open up the floor for any questions for Jared and the team. Mr. May, you've got your hand up first, and be happy to have you go first.
Yeah, hi. My first question is regarding the Advisory Committee Bylaw, Chapter 9, Article 1. There's a recommendation put forward in this report that I firmly and wholeheartedly believe is based on poor or misrepresentation. Because at no time has the Advisory Committee been without members for longer than 7 months, because I was the member who left and came back. We haven't had all these problems on the Advisory Committee with getting participation. What we've had the problem with on the Advisory Committee is constantly being attacked and tried to minimize us. And that is, again, part of this report. And I feel this report is being utilized in that regard in a lot of ways, because if you look at your acknowledgements, I believe they are your 6 best practices. And you have the first one, which I think was the Town Administrator's Weekly Report. It just really kind of strikes me that we're talking to the town administrator, the accountant, the assessor, and the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee, and limiting a department head response to the taxpayer that was implemented by the town administrator, was promoted by the Board of Selectmen. And now we're going to once a month, potentially, in this report is suggesting once a month. It would seem to me that since there's a 2-time a month department head meeting, it would be more efficient and responsible to have 2 reports basically of the department head meetings. Maybe the minutes of them would suffice as the weekly report or the monthly report or the bi-monthly report. The Advisory Committee issue, again, in the acknowledgements, I think that was bad information in, bad information out. I do have a question, and this is related to practices. As you pointed out, under our free cash, we've had 7% plus up to, I believe, 14 and change or 17 and change at one point during the past 4 years. My concern with that is that all of these things, the social media policy, the excuse me, I'm losing my train of thought here. But all of these items basically point to the fact that we have to have more accountability from the administration. The social media policy, that's an internal employee issue. Strategize for success planning. That one there has been avoided purposely in the past year. You know, I have a bunch of emails pushing for contract updates that didn't happen, that were delayed and all this stuff that just nobody wants to do this. The notification to the accountant, I think, is a great thing. The audit, the management letter and the corrective action, long overdue. You know, I just think the rest of it was a few individuals' personal biases. And I think in the future, you might want to spread out your information gathering a little bit more to probably get better results. Because
Bob,
in this case, I think you missed the mark on a couple of these.
Bob, if I could help out. So I've been taking notes. I think we get the sense that, you know, you wanted to give an overall opinion on how DLS does these reviews and otherwise. So I took a couple of questions, but I wanted to go back to the first one. So your critique of how Jared's team looked at the makeup of the advisory committee. Let me push it as a question now. Jared, is there any, from what Bob was saying, you know, he thought it was an opinion of numbers or otherwise. Was there anything else that went into your recommendation as far as just size alone for advisory committee, to answer Bob's question, or at least give him a little bit more perspective on how DLS looked at that?
Sure. You know, there were two factors that came into play. One was in talking with the local officials just across the board in the town of Templeton. It was my understanding that it was very difficult to find volunteers for boards in general. And on the lines of the advisory committee, that at different times there have been delays in having 7 full members. So with that said, and in past practices, you know, boards, committees, not necessarily just the advisory committee, but if they're struggling to find volunteers and to keep the board at its full capacity at 7 members, then the thought of potentially going from 7 to 5 would potentially be beneficial for the community. Also keep in mind that this report are recommendations and suggestions. It's not something, you know, it's completely up to the town to take our thoughts and our ideas and to discuss that among the boards, among the committees, and then to move forward with actions that the community wants to take. In this discussion too, Michael and Bob, if there is strong feelings that some of the information is inaccurate, and that's a feeling town-wide, you know, I'm happy to make a revision to the report in terms of making sure of its accuracy, and then resubmitting it to you folks. By all means, you know, we want to make sure that there's no misstatements in the report.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
could.
Will. Yep. Will, if you can. So Bob, I wrote down your questions, or at least your points about the free cash question, reports and the frequency for them, advisory committee participation. This, you know, you did refer to the social media policy. We could talk about that as far as a draft and what its purpose could be. and then your overall recommendation to DLS to say that, this is how you go about with your process, but here are the effects, at least within this specific community. So Bob, thank you for that. Will, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
As the longstanding member of the advisory committee I've been on since 2012, I have to end up saying that the information that you had is incorrect. No time did the advisory committee have 2 openings for over a year. There has been times when we've had openings. They would be closed up within a couple of months. As you heard Mr. May said, the longest period we had was when he got off, and we had 2 openings which were filled within 6 to 7 months, and we had 7 members on the board. And reviewing that, I looked back all the way down to 2017, and it's been very consistent of having 7 members at particular times. If there's an opening, that they've always been filled. So I'm not sure how that was formulated to end up getting that information. The other thing is that when you recommend, and I understand it's a recommendation, I looked at communities the size of Templeton and others also. It's very consistent that I looked at them, and it's a vast majority of the communities I looked at, over 20 of them, that the membership was at least 7 members, if not higher. There were a couple of them which had memberships of less than 7. I agree, but there was also there was more communities with membership larger, and they were about the same size as Templeton. It's generally been an issue with advisory making recommendations, and they haven't been taken and actually questions. They hadn't been taken positively as to try to end up correcting things by the administration. And I'm talking about over a number of years. So, I mean, in addition to that, all the issues that were brought up by Mr. May, in addition to the advisory committee, we have always ended up having questions. As an example, the BVA report. Now, this happened about 2 years ago, that the advisory committee actually had a presentation by a member that of the advisory committee to the Board of Selectmen on having those done by the 10th of the month. In reviewing those, since March of last year up until October, that was always met by before the 10th. It's only been since November that they haven't been met. I know there may be some issues on that, as we have a new administrator. We have had a town accountant that has gone part-time and not a full-time. I understand those are issues, but there was a general consensus when that presentation was made by one of the members, and I'll tell you who it was, is Paul Grubb, who he was one of the better members of the community, and he unfortunately he actually moved out of town to going to another community, and he made those recommendations to end up having it by the 10th. Like I said, the administrator at that time, as well as the selectman, did end up viewing that as the goal to end up doing it. And like all those months that I said, about 8 or 10 months that I went back, that was met. So I'm not sure that going to the 3rd week is really advantageous, because what we have done for the advisory committee is that when we get the BVA, we actually review that and feedback issues that we see with the BVA to both the selectman, the administrator, and the accountant. Now, it's not always taken positively. It's like, oh yeah, they found something else, but that's another issue in itself. That's why we've had in the past some members that felt that it was an uphill battle to try to take and end up making recommendations that were not carried forth, and we did lose a number of members over the years because of that. So I mean, I see that from the advisory, but I also see the issues that Mr. May brought up about the other issues also, and I'll close on that.
All right, thanks, Will. I just wanted to circle back to a couple of the points that he made. So, Will, I've took down that inaccurate data for participation of the advisory committee, and I certainly heard. I wrote it down on my pad as differential recommendations from all internal and external. I kind of picked up on that, even though we've got an external group that's looking in from the state level to really kind of balance those with any internal recommendations as well. And Will, I know that you use that term frequently. And then just to wrap up with what Will was saying, with almost more of a question back for Will, in terms of budget versus actual, do you think that's the frequency of it? Are you asking, or would you ask any of the panel that we have with us today, is the frequency of the BVA more of an issue for you, or is the lack of consistent BVAs part of what you think causes the inconsistent members from year to year?
It's let me answer that by saying that the inconsistency in the past has been an issue.
Okay.
The fact that there is issues within the BVA that we've done feedback has been the issue with members in the past. And when I say that they have given feedback, and by the way, when we meet tomorrow, as I told Adam when I spoke to him earlier this week or last week, that we will be ending up giving some feedback on what we see on the April BVA. There was some issues that we saw, or at least I saw. I think maybe the other members. In fact, one of our newest member, who was not a member, actually sent me a thing and said, "Is this right?" And I said that I told him that needed to be discussed at the meeting per se. But I mean, those are the type of things that I've seen over the years that have actually been detrimental to us operating the way we should for the advisory committee.
Deb, Jared, or Tara, do you have any feedback on that?
Sure. So Will, just to touch on that. So when you're talking about the budget versus actual, just so everybody knows what BVA means. In our report, we recommended the third Monday of each month, and for those recommendations, there were a couple of things that played into that. One was the staffing level within the town, and we know most communities are at a bare minimum staffing level, typically with a department head and one staff member that could potentially be part-time. So with that in mind, as well as in order for the budget to actual report to mean something to the town and to the people that are looking at it, it needs to be right. It needs to be accurate. And in order for that to be accurate, at the end of each month, the treasurer collector needs to make sure that her cash book is in order, that her bank statements are reconciled. And so getting that information at the end of the month and checking the bank statements that come in to each of the accounts and reconciling the cash internally, and making sure the accountant reconciles the general ledger. And then you need to make sure that the accountant reconciles the general ledger with the treasurer collector's cash book to make sure that the cash is accurate and that these accounts are in order and that there were no mistakes made. So based on that information, we were looking at maybe the third week out. Again, this is just a recommendation. And if the town thinks differently, that's something that they can talk about internally. But for all intents and purposes, we wanted to make sure that there was some consistency with when this budget to actual report was going to be distributed within the town. So if you say a day that's too early in the month, well, it's not going to give the accountant and the treasurer collector time to reconcile and to provide you with an accurate report. If I understand if you go too late, then maybe it's not going to be as beneficial for the advisory committee and the select board. So the town needs to talk about this and kind of meet somewhere in the middle. But you also, I think, have to talk with the treasurer collector, talk with the accountant, and see what their schedules are like and how that they can actually get the work done in order to provide you with a budget to actual that's up to date and reconciled.
Thanks, Jared.
If I can,
Bev?
Mr. Chairman, just to take and respond to him.
Sure.
We did go through that process, Jared. Like I said, that presentation was made to the administrator and to the select board, and we had buy-in from them as well as the accountant. And I can't speak for the treasurer collector, but I know that the accountant ended up indicating that was a doable thing by having it by the 10th of the month. I mean, so I can only go by what we've already come across and already done. And
Right.
I took it as the commitment by her to take and end up having all of that done and to take and end up doing that. If it was a day or so late, it wouldn't be so bad. But I mean, at least we had a commitment by the 10th. A day or two on either way is acceptable as far as the advisory committee at that time.
And that's something, internally that you folks can work out. And if you can get it earlier, that would be great. Something else in our conversations with the town and staff within the town, the hiring process. So there was a period of time where you folks didn't have an assistant town accountant. And I'm not sure, I saw recently that you folks were looking for an assistant town accountant. So when you take that out of the equation, now everyone's left with the town accountant, it's going to be hard to meet a deadline of the 10th of every month. And this is just me talking personally about experiences that I've had with other communities, not necessarily just with the town of Templeton. And now if you look in the treasurer collector's office and you see that they've also had some staffing, staffing shortages as well. So when you factor information in like that, it's going to be very, very difficult to meet the 10th of the month. But again, this is something for the town to decide and to set up a particular date. And I think that it should be talked about, and that you should set up a date that is agreeable to all departments so that you can get the information that you need.
Well, that's why I made, if I could, Mr. Chairman, that's why I made the statement that since October, there's been some issues, and I understand those, just what you're talking about. I would anticipate that once those positions have been filled and we've had some time, we could end up getting back to the agreed upon date or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Thanks, Will. Bev, I saw that you came off mute. Did you have something for the board?
Yeah, I have my hand up, actually. I agree with Bob. When I read this report, I was very, very upset. I cringed when I found out the report had been written and who we had talked to. The advisory board works really hard. And they have for a long time. I've been on 3 of them. And the only way that you're going to get members is you have to look for them. If you don't look, nothing's going to happen. To do an advisory board, we do our job. And that doesn't mean that we're going to approve everything that goes by us. So Jared, it's not your fault. But that report you wrote is going to go down in Templeton's history. And that hurts. Because in 50 years, if somebody looks back and says, who the hell was on that board?
Okay.
Go Michael, I have the floor, thank you.
I know, I was gonna have a
Jared,
conversation with
you
you.
only get who you talk to, and it's too bad that you didn't talk to more. If I had known, I would have come in and spoke to you. Okay?
Bev, just as some back and forth. In terms of history and document otherwise, the 2009 document to me was more troubling than DLS's observations this time around. Perhaps I'm a glass half full kind of person, but I didn't look at this as a negative report that the advisory committee was, late to dinner on items. I know how hard you work. I was on the advisory board for a year. I agree with all the three of you that have spoke so far in terms of consistency and trying to keep a 7-member board. Will gets Bob, you've been continually coming back and to sit on that board, which is good. But in terms of consistency, I think that's really what the report was trying to talk about, to say, if you can't be consistent, and I'm paraphrasing from the report, then potentially you might be able to fix your own problem if you didn't try and go after 7 members. So I don't look at it, again, I don't look at it as a negative thing that the advisory committee was derelict in their duties. They were making a recommendation based on what they had heard. And I get it. You think it's somehow a political hit job, and I never got that sense reading it. But I disagree that it's I don't think it's a black eye on the community.
But it's a bad idea to have 3 members.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, again, I looked at the 2009, and I'm really disappointed in your board as well as past boards for the fact that it was pointed out not to have selectmen on boards and committees. And here we ended up in the last annual town meeting. There was a warrant article put forward that contained a selectman that was going to be on that particular commission. And here you had already received this particular updated one, and you already had the 2009. I find that more concerning than the fact that they want to take and change or recommended the size of the advisory. There seems to be less consistency at the administration level than there is within the advisory committee.
Thank you, Will.
Will,
Tim,
could I speak to Michael, can I speak to the report, or do you want to speak first?
No, Jared and then Tim.
Okay. Will, just to speak a little bit on that question there, and I want to jump back to the report that was done back in 2009. The major focus of that recommendation was because of the select board and the advisory committee in holding multiple positions within the town that created conflicts of interest and infighting, which made it difficult for the town to move forward and get work done. In terms of the conflict of interest, to be a select board member or to be an advisory committee member and then hold a paid position within the town that you potentially could make suggestions or recommendations towards that could impact that, there's a conflict of interest from that regard. Now there's going to be times where these little subcommittees pop up within communities, and there's going to want to be participation of a select board member or a member of the advisory committee. And the intention of this recommendation was not to say that the select board and the advisory committee can no longer, participate in anything else but except for their duties. That wasn't the intent. But also, if it's contentious, the select board could appoint a person that would go to the meetings and then report back to them as their advisor to the committee. But I just wanted to clarify that a little bit, that it was that recommendation was really based on the happenings that were going on back in 2009, 2008, 2007 that were really preventing the town from moving forward.
I can only speak for the advisory committee. That the advisory committee members going all the way back, as far as I know, have never participated on any elected or appointed other committees per se. And the fact that the bylaw was actually changed with the advisory committee pushing for the fact that we could be on temporary committees such as choosing somebody for the administration position, that has already changed. So there's some things that change. I don't know how in depth that you looked at the actual bylaw per se, but that's something that's already happened. And the advisory committee understands that, and we tried to take and maintain over the years an independent committee.
Okay.
Thank you, Will. Tim?
Yes, I just have two quick comments. I've heard Ms. Bartolomeo say it again tonight, a recommendation to reduce to 3. I don't know what document she's reading. That's not what I'm reading here. The second part of it, yes, there was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of argument on the Disabilities Commission, but I would also caution, understand, and get yourself digging into a little deeper on the America with Disabilities Act and what we had in our ADA report. We have some conflicting documents and guidance, but we need to move forward the correct way.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank
if
you,
I
Tim.
could, I'd like to point out to
Will,
Mr.
Will.
Toth that
Will.
at the annual town meeting, one of the advisory members did end up indicating and doing a substitute motion.
Okay. Bev, did you have any, since Tim was speaking to something that you had said, did you have any rebuttal on that, or did Will take care of that for you?
No.
Okay. Jeff, did I see you put your, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. I think some people might be confusing the recommendation out of this report with a comment that had been made a couple meetings ago at the Board of Selectmen meeting, where a member of the Board of Selectmen opined that maybe advisory should be 3. That's, to me, that's how that come into the mix. It's not in this report, and it wasn't in the 2009 review. I served on the advisory committee for a little over 4 years. I'm on my 3rd go round at the Board of Selectmen. And with the beginning of the meeting, when it was mentioned that the budget format and budget document and presentation has more clarity and more detail than our previous budget, I believe I demonstrated this at a Board of Selectmen's meeting, that the old line item budget, and I have one Selectmen's book that had the line item budget, and it's a couple hundred pages long, with very little backup material, if any, very little capital presentations, that so forth and so forth. So the budget book that we get now, there've been 500-600 pages. They are far more detailed, far more informative than the old budget format ever was. And I believe we got to that point through some mistakes that were made at the 2013 annual town meeting with the 14 budget. That I was on the Board of Selectmen at that time. I was away in the sandbox, and that's just a fact. That's not an excuse. But there were mistakes that were made in the fiscal 14 budget that was put together and presented by the advisory committee at that time, and a lack of, in my opinion, a lack of understanding or knowledge or check information, numbers that were financial numbers that were not good, not clear, and not straight. And that led to a very tumultuous year. And Deb Wagner, you can, she knows this as well as I do, if not better. That led us to where we are today, which I believe a lot of good things came out of that implosion.
Oh,
I think Jeff froze. I'll give him a second. While I'm waiting for Jeff to come back, I did want to say this is a public meeting that is being streamed live, and we have some live chat messages. Mrs. April Cover had a couple of comments. She was talking about the necessity for accountability in Templeton, and that her view of the chain of command needs to be clearly defined and adhered to. She talked of the desire for a full-time accountant, and which is different than what we have right now in this interim sense. And just another comment about people have resigned from positions on committees because of the recommendations are often overlooked and not taken into consideration. So there's a couple of comments as we move forward. Jeff, if you want to continue, you froze. Uh-oh.
what happened?
There,
Am I still there?
you are.
Okay, so that's some of the stuff that that happened, and I don't know where you lost me, but certainly the budget and the presentation stuff that we have today is way better than we had, and I think some good things came out of that implosion in 14, and that's what I call it. And some of the history, though, that we have in this report, as far as how many administrators, treasurer collectors and stuff we have, we didn't have a combined treasurer collector until 15. So I don't know where the history of, we had 3 town administrators and 4 accountants and 3 treasurer collectors between 12 and 17. We didn't really have a town administrator till the second half of fiscal 14, which was Bob Markle. And he was an interim. And in fiscal 14, we funded a town moderator because we did a bylaw change, and it did not get approved from the AG till in the fall. So there's just, to me, the report, there's some of the history, the details about what was done, how many we had, and things like that. It is recommendations. And one of the biggest things I think we still have as a town, starting with the Board of Selectmen, because we're the most visible board there is not only putting policies and procedures in place, but once you do that, you have to follow them. Otherwise, they're useless. It's like bylaws, mass general laws. We need to follow them, and that would perhaps help with getting people to volunteer for committees and attend town meeting. Just look at the election and how many openings where people didn't run. It's not just people volunteering for the advisory committee, it's across the board. It's the form of governance that we have, but in the end, eventually here, maybe not too distant, we may need to change our governance formats and change from governance by committee to, I believe, a town manager with a charter and a town council form of government. And a lot of these town meeting and every board of select, all that it goes away because people, for a lot of other reasons too, just don't volunteer the way they used to because they can't, because of time, work, and so forth. So that's my nickel's worth on this report. I agree with some of it I don't agree with. Some of it is just a matter of the town following policies and procedures, and mass general laws. And I appreciate DLS putting this together, re-looking at the 2009. There was a lot of financial reviews of area towns that was done in 2009. I don't know how many of them have had a, like a reboot or a recheck, but
Jeff, if you don't mind, if I could redirect one of the things that you talked about, we have about 5 minutes left. Bev, I want to redirect one of the things that Jeff said for Jared, Tara, and Deb. Now that Jeff has said that, there's a difficulty getting, a manpower out of HR, out of your community. What have you seen when you've done these reports in other communities? Do you see other communities struggle with that? Is there any kind of additional recommendation you'd make for that?
Michael, I'll speak first, and then Deb, Tara, if you guys want to add something, by all means, jump right in. So Michael, definitely across the Commonwealth, we're seeing issues with volunteering as well as the hiring of staff members. With the baby boomers retiring, we're seeing more and more people that are coming into local government with less experience, oftentimes with no municipal experience. It's not something that you can go to college for and take, how to become a municipal official. So there's not something that's there. I think a couple of the things that you folks are doing are going to help. One was the CCC, the Community Compact Grant that you folks applied for and were issued some funding to do a compensation and salary survey. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be huge to see where your community stacks up with other communities in the surrounding area. Because we do see a trend, if a community, isn't competitive in terms of salary and benefits, then they're likely not to potentially grab someone else's attention from another community that has a lot of experience, and they're going to get the individuals that they see finance. And so, I'm going to I worked with members, so I'm going to apply for that position. So that can be very difficult. I also think, some of the other things that you folks have been doing well in order to drum up, volunteers is that you're using social media. You're using your website, you relaunched, to a governmental domain so that people can see it, so that it's available. So you're doing some of the right things. It's hard to attract those people. Deb, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, just with regard to talking about getting people interested in volunteering for boards, it's the kind of thing that starts off when people are younger. How do you get people excited about participating in government? And, how do you get your youth in the town excited about participating in government? Is it the kind of thing that you start maybe appointing, a youth advisor to different commissions and boards where, now you're kind of developing a farm team, right? And you're getting people interested in participating in their government. And I can tell you that in my community, I happen to be the mom of an 18-year-old who had a fabulous elementary school history teacher, U.S. history teacher, who really got him excited in government. And he's participating, just appointed to the Charter Commission in town and the Historical Commission, but he's excited in government. So maybe developing that with the youth of the town, as someone mentioned, baby boomers retiring and stopping their participation in things, we talk about it all the time as it goes to town finance officials, paid positions. What can we do to develop a farm team out there? Because there just isn't one. It's a little easier with boards and commissions because they're not paid positions. So it's, not going to cost you anything to try to get people, to just come and maybe be an appointed youth member or something like that. So, that's just my thought on how you maybe develop a bench, as they say. So,
and even to add to that a little bit, Michael, Internally,
Got about a minute left.
okay,
Okay.
I'll be quick. Internally, look to employees who are eager, who want to stick around, who want to learn, new topics, who want to progress their career, and kind of guide them along and feed them with additional, tasks and responsibilities in preparation for a potential taking over as the accountant or as the assessor or as the treasurer collector. So try to look within internally and engage those employees to see who is interested.
Can I say
Well,
something?
thank
really
you,
quick?
Jared. Bev, I was absolutely going to give you your opportunity for the last word. We've got about 30 seconds before
The problem-
TC.
The
Okay.
problem we have is that we have a lot of city people moving to town. They don't understand town government. It hasn't dawned on them yet that they have to contribute to the community because it is their community now. I want younger people to come in. I am not going to be here forever. Will is not going to be here forever. Somebody has to step up. If that doesn't happen, Jeffrey's right, because we cannot continue the way we are. We simply don't have the time,
Yeah.
you know?
Beverly, one spot I would say would be a hot place that you could potentially, get information out there. And this would have to be something the town would have to think about. But think about all the kids that are in town that play sports, that play soccer,
Okay.
that play field hockey, that play lacrosse. Well, maybe on Saturdays, when the fields are full of parents, younger parents and kids, there's a way to maybe set up a booth or some information or to pass out information to those families that are going to have younger parents because they're down there at youth sports and things like that. That might be one avenue that you folks could look at.
And
Sometimes those people they're coming down Route 2 at 6 o'clock at night, They live here, but they don't work here.
you guys may be the beneficiary of a remote work environment because of the pandemic, where people can now live wherever they want. And Templeton's certainly a beautiful community, and be able to work remotely. So that may help you.
Deb, on that note, I think that intensely positive thing that you said about our beautiful community is a great way to wrap up the presentation. I know that it seems a bit abrupt, but we were given the heads up from TCTV. We have many meetings this evening. So first, I want to be able to thank Deb, Tara, and Jared. Thank you very much. We've taken this report. We're going to use it to the best of our abilities. You can see that our joint team here has some other designs, agreements, disagreements, and otherwise, but we're going to take the report and even the discussion here tonight. I think that the last portion of it was probably the most helpful and really central or core to a lot of the recommendations that you made, is to get some involvement within the community. So I'd like to thank again, Deb, Jared, and Tara. Thank you so much. I'd also like to thank the advisory committee for taking time. I know they've got a meeting tomorrow. We've got the select board meeting coming up in about 30 minutes. So I thank my board as well. And I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn this joint meeting of the advisory committee and select board.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor of adjournment, signify by
Aye.
saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays?
No.
Hearing none? Well, at least one abstention, right? So at 6:04, a little bit over TCTV, sorry about that, but successful joint meeting. Thank you very much to DLS and Department of Revenue. We're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting.